Great to have you here today. This is where I use my intuition and my abilities to tune into a collective consciousness that I know as UmRay, which means Mother of Light, to answer your questions, answer life's big questions. For those of you in Europe, it sounds a little like a agony aunt. For those of you in the US, it's like Dear Abby. But using my intuition. Why do I do this? I do this because I get friends calling me all the time for my hits on things. And a lot of times these questions are very universal. They're very helpful for us as a collective to tune in and listen to not just the words that are being offered here today, but actually the frequency of love that is connecting all of us here on the World Wide Web. So my intention is to be of service to you with my intuitive gifts, to lead by example. I know that you all also have your own guidance systems, your own intuitive guidance systems, and I am here to help you hone that, to listen to that, to believe in that. And there is no better way to practice believing in your intuition and those gut instincts than relationships, which is our theme today, is relationships. So it's going to be juicy. Tune in. Hopefully you will relate to these questions. I always start with an overall message and a request. So the request is whatever platform you are seeing this on, whether it be Facebook, whether it be LinkedIn, maybe it's on YouTube. Would you please, please, please like and subscribe so that more people can see this, more people can benefit from this. And if this episode on love and relationships feels relevant to you and you want to pass it on to someone else, that would be a true gift. So, yes, Nora says, the frequency of love. I love that. I love the frequency of love. Me too. Okay, so as I tuned in today, the first message that came up around relationships was to thine own self be true. And to remember that a relationship with anyone else is merely a reflection of our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with the divine, or whatever it is you believe in, God, spirit of the universe, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, or however you define that source of nature that you tune into and experience something that is beyond your power, beyond your comprehension. And love is much like that, is it not? It is beyond our comprehension. And so all relationships begin with the relationship with the self. That's why the message for today is to thine own self be true. So let's tap into what that really means. It means that you already have this innate sense of knowing what is right, what is true, what is your truth in relationships. And the problem becomes when you second guess this truth, when you second guess this knowing, this deep sense of, I know what I know, don't know how I know it, don't know how to explain it to anybody else, but I have this deep, small, subtle truth inside of me about a relationship. And the issue always becomes second guessing ourselves, second guessing that deep inner knowing, that truth, that softer voice with a louder voice of justification, also known as the ego. So this is the year where we get to practice. This is the time in our lives where we get to practice listening deeply. Because in 2023, we are asking of ourselves to really step up to the plate wholeheartedly and to love ourselves more deeply, love our knowingness more deeply, and in turn, be more capable of loving others. So the vision that I had starting this was, I had a client yesterday who I had a session with, and he said to me, I wish that I had listened. And so at the end of today's episode, I'm going to give you some practices to listen more deeply, to really take some time to cultivate that relationship with that deeper knowing that we all have, so that ultimately you can be more in alignment around your choices in relationships and with relationships, and even deeper than that, so that you can really avoid the disasters that we all face when we don't listen to that deeper knowing and we just jump in wholeheartedly, and then we get our hearts broken and hurt. I know you can relate to this. If you can relate to this, please put it in the chat below. Nora says, I'm a classic second guesser. Yeah, second guessing that knowing. So let's look at how that really shows up. Let me jump into the first question. And like I said at the end, I'm going to give you a little practice to do to start to cultivate a deeper sense of trust with this knowingness, because I believe that many of the relationship foibles and heartaches that we experience are a result of not listening and not believing ourselves, not believing our own truths. Okay, so I'm taking 2 questions today, and one of them is, how do I apologize? Dear Siddiqi, last week in a fit of anger, I yelled at my partner and accused him of things that I knew he wasn't really guilty of. Now he doesn't want to talk to me. What do I do? And that is from Anxious Annie from Dublin. So how do I apologize? Great question. How do I apologize? Let me start by asking you, Annie, have you ever made an apology that wasn't heartfelt and sincere? You just made that apology from a sense of obligation, or maybe just because you wanted to get that person off your back, or you wanted the conflict to end. And so you said, I'm sorry, but there wasn't any energy behind the I'm sorry. It was just kind of like you were walking through the motions, hoping that by just saying I'm sorry, you would get the outcome. So saying I'm sorry and apologizing are 2 different energies. Apologizing is really a heartfelt acknowledgement of where you were less than your most loving, great self. An apology is really ownership of where you fell short of being who you aspire to be in relationships. And so an apology isn't, I'm apologizing for who and what I am. An apology, first and foremost, is to yourself of, I realize that I went off the handle. I knew it wasn't his fault. I yelled at him anyway. I vented, which we often do to those people that we feel safest with, that we feel closer to. And then we regret it because we see the effect that our poor, less than congruent behavior has on other people. So what to do? First of all, beating yourself up only perpetuates that sense of shame, of guilt, or I did something wrong. And it's like a snowball. It just gathers momentum. And so feeling bad and feeling ashamed, or feeling kind of that gut sense of like, oh, I can feel that there's a disruption in the force field in my relationships. If you're sensitive like me, the minute that there is that disruption, that schism with anyone, you feel it acutely. So what do you do about that? How do you truly apologize? Well, first of all, you don't just say the words, I'm sorry, because I'm sorry doesn't fix or change anything. An apology is really meant to be an amendment of your behavior, a reflection of how you might have done it differently, how you would have liked to have treated and behaved towards this person. And it's a heartfelt acknowledgement of where you fell short in connecting, where you severed that connection with your anger, in this case, with a lack of truth. And so there's 2 parts to this. I wasn't, I was angry. I took it out on someone else. There's 3 parts. I was angry. I took it out on someone else, and I accused him of something that I knew wasn't true. And so do you see how at the heart and soul of this issue is there was something that wasn't true, and I put it on someone else? Take a deep breath. It's okay. We all do it. We are not striving to be perfect human beings. We are striving to be perfectly imperfect and lovable versions of ourselves. And so we're going to fall short. It's just inevitable. You're going to lose your temper at your kids, at your dogs, at your partner, at your boss, at your coworkers, at the person that pulls out in front of you on the street. The way to make amends is to acknowledge, first and foremost, that you did know the difference between right and wrong. You did know what was right for you. You did know what was right in the situation. Admit it to yourself. And then a heartfelt apology is when you, for whatever reason, fell short. Now, an apology is not an excuse. I can raise my hand to the excuse giving in any given situation. And I can be like, well, but I had a migraine, or but I was busy, or I had this going on. Doesn't matter to the other person why you did what you did, just that you acknowledge that you did what you did. So an apology is an acknowledgement. First, you have to acknowledge it to yourself. Then it's you humbly acknowledge it to the other person. You acknowledge the effect that it had on them, and then you zip it. And then and then you refrain from further explanation, further justification. One practice that I have found really helpful is that Hawaiian forgiveness mantra, Ho'oponopono. You can go look it up online. It talks about, the 5 words. I'm not going to go into it, but I have found Ho'oponopono a very helpful practice. I know I have some clients that actually teach it. If you want to know more about it, let me know. So I hope that was helpful. How do you apologize? Anxious Annie, you acknowledge what you've done, you admit it, and you ask for forgiveness. Speaking of forgiveness, the next question is, how do I forgive someone? And this is a real doozy. I had to take some time to meditate on this to really feel into the energy behind what was going on. And so the second question for today is, how do I forgive someone? Here we go. Pushing up my sleeves. Dear Siddiqi, I recently found out that my husband has been cheating on me. No. To make matters worse, it's with one of my dear friends. It's like, turn the knife. I don't think that I can ever trust either one of them again, and I am really profoundly sad. Previous to this, I thought that I had a loving relationship with each of them. I feel stupid for not seeing this stab in the back, and it has cut deep into my heart. How on earth can I find forgiveness for this unspeakable act of betrayal? Thank you for your intuitive guidance, and that is from Anonymous in Sydney, Australia. Woo, this is like human territory, the advanced course. So how do you forgive someone? How do you forgive someone that has betrayed you? How do you forgive 2 people that have betrayed you? How do you forgive yourself for not seeing what was going on and move on? This is a really big one. So how do you forgive? Well, first of all, let's admit that you have, as I intuitively feel into this, there's a lot of feeling behind this. There's a lot of energy behind it. And the first thing that comes to me is anger. And you can't jump to forgiveness of someone else until you have really felt those feelings. For those of you that do human design and you are, you have that emotional wave, you have to feel that whole emotional wave of I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm in disbelief, I'm in shame, I'm in all these feelings before you can actually come to forgiveness. You can't force yourself to do a spiritual bypass and forgive people when in your heart of hearts, you're still really pissed off and very, very deeply hurt and betrayed and probably shocked, shock and awe and all those things. So first of all, Anonymous in Sydney, let's not jump to forgiveness yet. You're not there. This is still a fresh wound. You need to give yourself some time and just space and maybe get some professional help. Maybe do what I've done when I've run into this. I've had some very, very deep betrayals in my life, professionally and personally. And here's what I do. I'm going to give you a little practice. I set the timer on my phone. I give myself 1 minute to go full out, beating the pillows, screaming. I put the dogs outside. I make sure my husband isn't home. And I go all at it for 1 minute, which is exhausting. 1 minute of pure expression of anger, of hurt, of disappointment, screaming into a pillow really takes the edge off that energy, because you cannot get to forgiveness until you have dispersed the energy of disappointment, of hurt, of fear, of all those things. So some of the practices of forgiveness are really feeling your feelings deeply. Maybe we need some professional help to do that. Maybe this is not the first time we've been betrayed. Betrayal is part of the human experience. And so when you rise above it, and I'm about to give all of us a practice in relationship, the advanced course in relationship. And it has to do with forgiveness, apologies, owning your part. And really, part of what I'm sensing behind this is not just the betrayal, but where, and this is said with so much love and understanding, honestly, where did you know what you knew and you chose to doubt yourself? You chose to ignore. This is not from a place of blame. This is not from a place of shame. Usually these deep betrayals are not surprising to us. We had little bits of information, and the real issue is that we didn't listen and we didn't take a stand for ourselves, for our truth sooner. And then all this stuff was happening in our blind spot. So let's move into the practice for today around relationships. Anonymous in Australia, how do you forgive someone? Let's start with forgiveness of ourselves. So we've all had this. If you're listening, you have undoubtedly had some kind of massive betrayal, some jerk in your life that you wish that you had never known their name, you had never met them. So let's do a practice together about how to tune in early and often to that deeper truth, that deeper knowingness, so that we can begin to cultivate compassion for ourselves when we choose other than that deep sense of knowing, and we go down a path of trying to convince ourselves that things are other than the way we are seeing them and experiencing them. Okay, so first, just if you're ready for this, this is going to take 3 minutes, short practice of mindfulness. And if you're in a place for this, let me do this really just gently with you. Find a time, recall a time in your life of a very hurt, a very deep betrayal in a relationship. Friend, family member, doesn't matter what it is. A time when you felt deeply betrayed, maybe deeply abandoned, deeply hurt. And if you can, it's helpful to go back to, maybe it's better to pick a stranger or a friend versus a relative, because relatives tend to be consecutive incidences. So observe when you first met that person and your first gut instinct on that person, that first kind of hit of knowingness that you had about someone. So just observe, okay, I had this moment. I knew that this person that would be going to be my husband, I knew that he was a philanderer. He admitted to me that he had had all these other relationships while he was previously married. I'm just pulling this out of the ethers as an example. So I knew that was part of him. And I thought, oh, that won't happen to me because he loves me, because he says I'm different, all those things. But you knew in your heart of hearts, if he had done it before, wherever you go, there you are. And you knew that there was a possibility that it was going to go down that road. So if we can just observe that moment that you knew, and if we can just detach, like taking, Velcro, when you Velcro apart, let's just detach from any sense of self-recrimination or regret and just simply reflect on the moment that you knew, what you knew, where you were, what was happening. Was there a moment of truth? Was there a point where you had this this, for me, it's kind of this, it's like things went off kilter a little bit. It was like nails on a chalkboard. It was like the scratch on the record. It was like someone singing out of tune. It was that kind of feeling of it's not quite right. And just breathe into that moment and know that even if that moment caused you pain, that it was an opportunity to learn something. And so even though this feels like a deep betrayal, or you wish that you had not gone down that path, what did you learn in the process? What did you learn about yourself? And find a place of acceptance, if you can, of compassion for the place that knew what you knew, but you chose this path that ended in suffering. And just see if you can just first and foremost acknowledge that there was that moment when you had that insightful knowing. I'm really curious about this for you, all of you. When I say pick a relationship that went south, go back to the moment of knowing that truth. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you would write in the comments, yes, I've had that experience. That's all I want to know, that this is landing for you, as this is a human experience and we're here to learn how to really trust that initial sense of truth that we have. And there will be a lot less suffering, a lot more relief, and a greater sense of compassion for yourself and others when you cultivate trust in that initial hit. So that's it for today. And Nora Jocelyn says, Nora, thanks for your comments. I really appreciate you. She says, yes, I've had that experience. And so just let me know if there's something you need help with. I am here. You can always write in your questions to DearSiddiqi@gmail.com. They're anonymous if you want them to be. You can write your name. You can make up a name. Anonymous in Sydney, thank you for your question. And who was my first one? And Anxious Annie from Dublin, thank you for your question. I really appreciate your questions. Let me know if this is helpful. Write your own questions to DearSiddiqi@gmail.com. Looking forward to seeing you next week. And please, 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 if you're watching on Facebook, please like or follow this page. If you're watching on LinkedIn, please, please, please connect with me. And if you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. It would really help us get this message out. And thank you so much for being part of Dear Siddiqi. I will see you next week at the same time.